Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to some bonus content for the Comic-Con podcast. We are talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Spoilers, nothing but spoilers with the side of spoilers for this week. So, of course, if you know, Mr. Milton the Manimal is very busy right now being a dad. I kind of wanted to do this by myself, but I figured, you know what? I saw some people post some stuff on Instagram, and I said, you know what? Let me hit up some people and see if anybody wants to join me for this little bonus content. So we have our friend who's now becoming a normal person here on the podcast, going to soon outdo Mr. Newbie Comics, Mr. Blakk Crown Comics. What's going on, BC?
Not much, man. I guess my CV was good from the last episode.
You were the first and only person I asked. I'll just
There
let
you
you know.
go.
I'll let everybody know that. So if you would have said no, then yeah, then I would have continued down the line of people that may have seen the movie. But yes, you were the first.
I'm
Newbie may
honored.
come back and say that he was asked, but he didn't see the movie. So
I appreciate it, man. It's always fun being here.
awesome. So I appreciate you coming on. So as we all do, we do like about a good 30-minute review. It's all spoilers. If you have not seen the movie, please stop listening to this. Go check out the movie, and then when you do, come back and listen to our quick review. So let's kind of get into it. Of course, how we always like to do, we talk about the characters, we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the post-credit scenes, mid-credit scenes. But the good thing is we don't have the credit scenes. So let's get right into some of the characters. So returning characters, we're going to briefly touch on them. So the main ones I'd say, of course, is Miles and Gwen. And then you have some new characters that the main ones that we're going to talk about is the Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Punk, and Spider-Man India, I guess, would kind of be like the main ones. Of course, Peter B. Parker's in there, but I think the main ones from the last movie are, of course, Miles and Gwen. So, I'll kind of start off. So, Miles, of course, he's more mature. He's he's been Spider-Man now for a while.
Yep.
I think this time around, especially being Spider-Man, he's still, in my head, I still feel like he's like a whiny baby.
Yeah.
Like I like him. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love his powers. I love that he's, upgraded them a little bit, but I feel like he's still like a whining kid, right? I get it. He's 15 years old. So I don't know. Like,
whiny baby, but he's showing some growth. The guy's getting a little beef there. I don't know if you saw that. They put emphasis on it too. Still scrawny as hell. But
yeah, well, I guess that's always how he is. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird how I feel about Miles. What about you? What was your take on Miles this time around?
No, totally got the same vibe out the gate. You see, he's more established as a character, right? Like within his universe of 1610, he's very comfortable within the role of Spider-Man, but still whiny, not punctual. And it seems that's every Spider-Man's issue, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
But yeah, no, it's he did seem a little whiny, but he's young, still learning, and a lot more comfortable compared to the first movie. Showed a lot more confidence too. But yeah, I don't want to get too ahead of the game here because there's so much stuff that unfolds within this movie regarding Miles and Gwen.
Yeah,
so
we'll talk about that. So yeah, I mean, let's kick it right into Gwen. You brought her up. What did you think this time around?
So, dude, right out the gate, the movie starts with Gwen, and that was a neat little change up. The intro before we even got any credit, right? That this is the movie and all that stuff. Like, we saw some Gwen story for about what, maybe 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, it was pretty deep.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the backstory. I don't know if you noticed, I actually shared it on Instagram, but man, Sony knocked it out of the park when it comes to art. The visual of the movie, when you saw Gwen and her universe, really, it felt like copy paste of like the Radioactive Spider-Gwen comics. I was like, wow, this looks incredible.
Yeah, I agree. I'm, of course, huge Spider-Gwen fan. So, the whole Robbie Rodriguez, Jason Latour, Ricardo, like those guys, that whole story arc, those lines totally has that vibe. It's definitely, it's very aesthetic. It's very simple, but yet it's very, elaborate. And like she is, her and her father are just in that universe. It's just so different. And you're right. I mean, hell, like the first, I'm like, oh my God, we're going to start off with Spider-Gwen. I'm like, I'm loving this already. I'm like, yeah, let's get a lot. I didn't expect like 15 minutes of her, no, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just great to see the whole backstory for people that don't know. Because yeah, the only thing you hear in the first one is that it was about Peter Parker, right? That's all you know. But there was a lot more. There's a lot more to her, of course, because her father is Captain Stacy. So it's not like the
Mhm.
whole normal Spider-Man where Uncle Ben dies. It's still Peter dies, and there's still a cop there. So it's completely different. Change and for being a newer character, it's just been amazing to see her, and just even throughout the movie she does a great job of how she's grown. Obviously, you've seen
Yep.
her um, being a mentor with, what should I say, with Jessica Drew. She's kind of like as like her Padawan. Like that's basically
Yep.
what it is, like learning from another female. Like immediately as soon as she meets her, she's basically like, adopt me. Like I want to be, I want to be part of the family. Like it doesn't even matter about all these other spider characters. It's just about being a strong female character. So having that in there is perfect.
And it's funny you bring up the adoption because Jessica Drew is carrying in the movie.
Yeah. Which is going to be interesting if we're going to see a baby come in the second movie. But yeah, let's talk about some of the new characters. So Jessica Drew, um, again, like we've talked about this on in the past. Doing a race swap sometimes is good, sometimes bad. I don't know why they did it with Spider Woman. I guess maybe because once they found the actress, they wanted to go that route. Maybe because they didn't have enough black characters. I don't know the reason for the race swap, but I like Jessica Drew. I thought the character was great. She was very, you know, sassy. She's very, out there. She hates, you know, she's kind of scared of Miguel, right? Like
Yep.
she's basically like, oh, if you screw up, you're gone. Like even like she has, she has her own motives in a way. She wants to make sure that she's staying level with the rest of the spiders. So I enjoyed her. I definitely did. What about you? What was your thoughts on the first time we get to see an animated Spider Woman?
Likewise, and it's funny you mentioned the whole thing of being scared of Miguel because it seemed like the entire spider character list of spider characters were. But look, to be honest with you, it didn't bother me. I know a lot of people were bothered by it for some reason.
Hmm.
But realistically, I don't feel like it changed anything when it comes to the story. Um, having that I felt like she had a hard role in a sense of like she was hardcore. Like she was very stern, very how could I say it? When it comes to joining the team, like she made it very clear there was like a no. And like you were saying,
Hmm.
Gwen was kind of with the adopt me, I want in on this team, right? Like she was so amazed by it. And then afterwards, obviously Gwen makes her way in. But Jessica Drew throughout the story, man, she almost felt like an enforcer, even though she
Yep.
was carrying, right? Like the whole movie, I'm like, man, my wife pregnant. Like we watched absolutely everything we were doing, and here she is on her
Hmm.
motorcycle. but uh, but yeah, no, it was cool, man. I was okay with the take. I think whoever had any doubts, it was good.
Mhm. And then, so as of, and we actually just talked about this on last week's episode with obviously the news of the live action Miles Morales film, and then the also announcement of a Spider Woman film, whether it's which is going to be animated from what we've read. Are we thinking that it's going to stick, like that they're going to continue this Jessica Drew? Are they going to do? Because obviously now people are already known like who Jessica Drew is with this Across the Spider Verse.
Yeah.
Will they stick with a black actress to play it? Do you see, or and and we talked about this, or do you see the Spider Woman movie being more than just her? Like, will it include Silk and Spider Gwen?
I definitely think live action's gonna require supporting cast 100%. Example, Silk would be a great addition. I think that would be awesome. But when we look at example what we got here in the animated, I kind of feel like they took everything Jessica Drew has either done or gone through, and they just like mixed it all into one. Like Jessica Drew got pregnant way later on. I think it was which
Mhm.
run in 20
Like
2015,
2015, like
somewhere
yeah, it was
around there.
after the Spider Verse. Like, well, like right around the first time that they did a Spider Verse series.
Yeah, exactly. So like it kind of felt like that's what they did with this character. Now, if we go live action and we go back to the regular comic Jessica Drew, I think that would maybe just throw people off. So I would expect if they end up doing live action, which pretty much Amy Pascal confirmed,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I see them keeping this route. I don't think they would change it.
Okay. And then of course some newer characters, especially ones that don't get too much love, but they do. Recently had a series. You have Spider Punk and
Mhm.
Spider Man India. Uh, and it's interesting because Spider-Man India was a character that was just kind of a throwaway. They had like a 5-issue miniseries, I think, or 4-issue miniseries, and then he was kind of brought back for Spider-Verse, and we've kind of seen him throughout some of these like Web Warrior series and other Edge of Spider-Verse stuff.
Yep.
But and then same thing with Spider-Punk. Like he was brought in as just like a side character in the Spider, like wasn't even introduced in Edge of Spider-Verse, was just introduced in the whole Spider-Verse series,
Hmm.
and then he was kind of in a little bit with the Edge of Spider-Geddon, and then he gets his own little mini series because that's kind of like helping him get a little following, right?
Yep.
What are your thoughts on these two characters?
Spider-Punk in comics. Look, his first appearance was within Amazing Spider-Man run. It was, I
Mhm.
think, issue 10, if I'm not mistaken. Not
Yeah.
within the last run, the
Oh,
one
it's far. Yeah.
prior, I believe. But yeah, so I thought he was awesome within the movie. That's 100%. He was kind of that rebellious, what you would expect from
Mhm.
a rock star wannabe. Uh, not that I know anything about that, but yeah. So I found the character to be very interesting. I thought they did a great job with him. I really like the visual effects too. Sometimes it would throw me off because there was a lot going on with him, right? Because they really made
Mhm.
it seem like that Ramones style of like punk art going on with him. But within the movie, they did a great job, and the character became a pretty important character come the end of the movie, right? He was really
Mhm.
towards the back end the whole time, right? He was always saying you could I don't want to say they kept him on the back burner, but when it was time to play an important part within the movie, he definitely did. Spider-Man India. That was cool. I enjoyed it, especially within the universe, right?
Oh yeah, the
Um,
whole Moonbatten. Is
yeah,
that whatever it's called? However you want to say it. Yeah.
yeah, it was cool. It was a vibe, but again, I think they did a great job with that, and we learn something very important about the movie and the Spider Verse in general, because something happens within that universe that sorry, something didn't happen within that universe that
Mhm.
should have happened, right? So something big within that scene, and I think
Yeah, the canon events that they're calling them.
Exactly, which technically canon events is this Sony's Spider-Verse version of Nexus events, right?
Yeah,
So,
we see that we call, and obviously, we'll get into it as well. The Nexus tree, we kind of see them branch off the same thing that we've seen in Loki
yep,
and the Avengers was Endgame,
yep,
with Sorcerer Supreme. So same thing. For myself, for like the characters, yeah, I think the actors and actresses who portrayed each of these characters is great. Of course, you had the guy who was in Deadpool, right? He portrays
yep,
Spider-Man India, which is it's funny because he's already like in it, he's already been in like a comedy movie with Deadpool.
yep,
And then you have a big name character, Daniel something with a K. I can't think of his last name. Who voices Spider Punk. I love, like you said, I love the aesthetic art. Like I love the style because when he's in the scene, like everything around him is like normal, but he's
yep,
just like completely different. Now, the one thing I will say is I absolutely hated, and I felt like I really needed to watch the movie with subtitles on because I couldn't understand the word he said. Like
yeah,
I get that he's like from Britain or
British,
whatever, and
yeah,
he's British, whatever, but I could not understand anything that he said to anybody. I swear.
yeah.
Like
And it
I'm
was it
like,
was kind of
damn.
like a hipster rocker, right? He was kind of
Yeah.
like he was saying things, and I'm like, what? He's saying, so I totally agree.
I mean, there's like even one part where he's talking and like they actually do like a little blurb on the bottom, like this is what this means. But like it's also so fast, and I'm trying to think of what else he's saying to like
Yeah,
understand things. Like I just don't get it. So, yeah. So they're great characters, and again, they will be back for the next one. And we'll kind of continue to talk about that towards the end of the review. But
yeah,
I guess before the last Spider guy, we're going to talk about the Spot. We have someone who is more known to be a regular Spider-Man villain,
hmm,
kind of like a throwaway character. If you grew up in the 90s and watched Spider-Man the animated series, you know who the Spot is.
yeah,
He's basically now he's become like this multiversal character. And, you know, when I've seen the trailers and obviously when they announced and they shown screenshots, it's like, oh, the Spot's going to be the villain. And I'm like, yeah, I really don't think the Spot's going to be the villain.
yeah,
Like I'm thinking there's something's going to happen with like Spider-Man 2099, and we're going to
hmm,
get into the reasons why I think that's still. And I'm like, nah, I just can't see the Spot being the main villain. But I mean, lo and behold, he definitely turned it around from his trying to rob an ATM now being like this multiversal like person, and you learn so much about his story and how he even falls back into the first movie. Now, which I now really want to watch the first movie to see if there's like a character that really does look like him,
Yeah.
who gets a bagel thrown at him. So, what did you think
Yeah.
about it, BC? Like, what did you think about the Spot as like a
Um, uh,
Spider-Man villain?
yeah, dude. First off, when I heard the casting, even I was kind of taken back. I was like, "Hey, like the Spot, like how is this gonna even play out?" Because realistically, how much of the Spot have we seen that has significance and like just such a big importance within comics? So when we get him within the movie, we see him, obviously we get the, the origin of how it came about, which you were just talking about. Um, but he seems kind of off, still finding his footing as this villain, doesn't
Hmm.
even know how to rob an ATM machine at this point, right? When we first see him. But then moving on, we see his development throughout the movie, right? And by the end of it, he's completely OP, right? He's like
Hmm.
mastered pretty much his powers and so forth, and now he's a huge threat. So the direction they went for this movie with Spot makes perfect sense for why they chose him as the villain. And the development was great. I found that was cool. I found the origin story kind of resembled Electro's within Amazing Spider-Man 2, right? Like how he was kind of that nerd, and then just by
Hmm.
accident something happened that
Yeah.
caused him to become the Spot, and
Yeah. And you
Electro.
blame Spider-Man. Exactly.
Exactly. So it was more or less copy paste when it comes to the origin.
True. And let's get last but not least, Miguel O'Hara. What do you think of Spider-Man 2099? You know, we've seen him in the animated series before. He's even had his like own like series back in the late 90s, but seeing him and especially being voiced by Oscar Isaac, who's a killer actor,
Mhm.
just having the acting chops and being able to like really bring a stern, demeanor to him. So what were your thoughts on him?
I thought he was badass, man. Like it was just unexpected for Spider-Man 2099 to be so like dead set with like his mentality of why this exists, and the entire like hive, we can pretty much say,
Hmm.
for all of this Spider-Verse stuff and the reasoning behind everything he's operating. Like it was a pretty cool approach. It's just something totally different from what I'm used to when it comes to Spider-Man 2099. Um, you almost feel like he's kind of, I don't want to say anti-hero, but like he's borderline villain as well within this movie, right? Like he kind of feels like that dad who was like, if you don't listen to me, you're in big trouble. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
he's just constantly guiding the team and like keeping a very tight ship, I guess you could say, like making sure nothing gets out of line for specific reasons, and we learn about why towards the end. Um, but I thought it was well done. The only thing I will say is I was kind of confused as well when it comes to his story of what
Hmm.
happened right within the universe that he fell in love with, which I guess we can talk about a
Yeah.
little later on. But no, character wise, it was great. There's one character, if this is the last character you wanted to speak about, that actually disappointed me. It fell very flat. Was Ben Riley?
Yeah. I think he may be more in like the second movie.
Yeah, but the way he presented himself felt very douchey. Like with
Yeah.
look at my muscles and stuff like that. I'm like, no, this is not Ben Riley. Like, what is this? Like,
Maybe
he
it's because
sounded
he's a
dumb.
clone, so he's I don't know, different than Peter. It's yeah, and I'm curious to think like if he's really from like his own Earth, or is there like again, because we kind of get brief storylines for everybody, right? We don't
Yep.
really get one from him. It's just who he is. He's
Mhm.
like, oh, I have a dark past, and I'm very sad, and he always does like all these dramatic poses and stuff. Um, so I'm wondering if like there's on his Earth, was there a Peter Parker that died and then, he was cloned, or is he just really just he is, Ben Riley Scarlet Spider of his Earth, basically, right?
Yeah, I expect we'll get more, like you said, within the second arc, like the second part of this movie. But
Mhm.
it just felt like even the way he was presented, if you looked across the screen, he seemed animated in a totally different way as well.
Mhm.
So I'm not too sure what they'll touch on, if they touch on any origin at all. But like I said, it was just the way he was acting. It just didn't
Yeah.
seem like Scarlet Spider. I was like, this guy seems like a total douche, and he's voiced by Andy Samberg, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. 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 Right.
So I was like, okay,
Yeah. It's very
that's
definitely
different.
very odd for him. For myself, for Miguel, like I think he was great, and I still feel like this, and this is still something that I'm leaving in the back. Like, why is he a vampire? So I'm still
Yes.
thinking that he's somehow has to do something with the inhibitors, who are a big villain part of the whole the original Edge of Spider Verse and Spider
Yep.
Verse storyline. So like, how did he become like this vampire spider? Right?
Hmm.
Like, did something also else happen to him, and that's why he's trying to make sure that certain things happen, and also getting all like, is also this like a side project, like trying to get all the spiders together in some spot, and then he's gonna try to take them out, because that's the
Yep.
whole thing of the inheritors
Yep.
of the Spider Verse series. So that's why I still think that he's the villain, not really the Spot.
Yep.
Like, I think that's, somehow that's gonna play into the to beyond the Spider Verse. So, but moving past the characters, what did you think about the movie? Good, bad? What was some of your favorite parts? There's so many cameos and Easter eggs. Obviously, we could do an hour of just everything that happens, but
Oh, dude, yeah, no characters. Before we wrap up characters, like you said, there's a trillion characters that like you're seeing across the screen. You're like, whoa, 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 slow down, right? You want to
yeah, you
catch
have
them
to
all,
see it
but you
again. And
can't. But it was neat to see Spider Rex, man, because this character just recently dropped within the last Edge of Spider Verse run,
Mhm.
and he's already made it to the big screen. So who's to say others might not in the next one? So that was pretty cool. Um, what did I think of the movie? I thought it was awesome, man. I think Sony's gonna hit a home run when it comes to a trilogy. When you look, the only thing I will say, let me start with negatives before I get into the positives. I kind of felt like they could have made this movie even 15 minutes shorter. You got to remember that the first one, it felt kind of more kid friendly. It was an
Mhm.
introduction to these characters. Peter played a lead role within this one, within the first one, but in this one, he's almost nowhere in this movie. Like his, I think he had maybe what 20 minutes
Scenes.
total of like screen
Yeah.
time. So I was kind of, I don't want to say taken blown away by that because I thought he would have a more dominant role within the movie, but he clearly didn't. And the first movie was an hour and 40 minutes. This was 2 hours and 20 minutes. There were some points that I felt were a bit drug out. So,
Mhm.
example, we'll take, Miles' story when it comes to his family, disappointing his family and so forth. Like, I feel like we could have cut out maybe at least 10 minutes of just Miles stuff on that end. But I understand why they ran with it the way they did it, right? It's the big build up towards the end, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot that comes together in the final few minutes, and then the movie cuts. And I was like, oh, here we go. I see what they're doing. Now they've got me antsy for the next one.
Right? It's so wild.
Yeah, but overall, man, visually the movie is incredible. I didn't even know how they could even one up the last one. They clearly did. Like I said, example, we take Gwen when she's in her universe. You see the visuals, man. It really mimics the art we saw within comics, and I thought that was very neat. Like you said, it's very basic, but it punches so well. And there was a scene where it transitions. It almost felt like the cover of Radioactive Spider Gwen issue 1, and I was like, whoa, like so cool.
Mhm.
Overall, story wise, like I said, there was some points that we could have done without, but man, does it all tie together. It's so good. I can see where they're going. I don't want to say it all right now. We'll get to that towards the end of the show. But overall, man, I think Sony's going to hit a home run when it comes to the trilogy.
Mhm.
The first one was amazing. Second one is incredible. I don't know how they can go beyond that.
Yeah, you got that right. This movie was amazing, spectacular. Every Spider-Man comic book that's out there, who's the ultimate Spider-Man, movie. That's what they're all saying.
Yeah.
But yes, I also feel like it's very easy to do all this and what they did in animation form, right? Like, change that to live action, where you doesn't look like it's fake, right? The
Yep.
idea of having all these spiders, like, imagine even having like 10 or 15 characters that are spider characters on screen in like a live action. It would just be
Yep.
crazy. And then, just the opening scene, just with like Gwen, Jessica, and Miguel, like just
Yep.
seeing them in that opening scene fighting Vulture was just like, it's amazing to watch. Visually, it's stunning. You also got to realize that anybody could really do this, right?
Mhm.
And if they write the correct story and they portray it well, like the movie can be done very well. I'm not knocking on it that it's, that people are praising it as the best Spider-Man movie ever, because it's two different media formats, right?
Yep.
Like DC is big on their animated movies. They're not great on their live actions. But
Mhm.
it's two different things. It's what you can do. Like I don't think you'd ever see all the insane stunts and everything that Miles and Gwen and everybody else do. Story-wise, yeah, there is just so much that happens throughout this entire film that I'm just like enthralled with. Like there, just the back and forth between the different dimensions, the skipping around. I think the family thing, like you said, could have been cut a little bit, but we all, everything is foreshadowing, right? Like
Yep.
everything that he talks to his mom about ends up, when he comes back at the end, it's not really her. It's, a different version of her. And you felt it, like, but it kept you guessing. And that was the best thing about this, right? And
Yeah.
that's the
No.
one thing that, we even seen more of, newer characters, like you spoke about newer characters and even existing characters who have nobody, um, like Spider Bite's new.
Yep.
The one literally is probably just a year old, maybe, or what, a year and a half. The one that's in like the wheelchair, the
Yep.
quadriplegic Spider-Man
That's a Sun
chick.
Spider.
Yeah, like she's super new.
Yep.
Obviously I was a big fan of the Spider Cat, like him appearing twice was cool.
Mhm.
The video game Spider-Man is in there. Like
Yep.
it's fun just to see. And I had like people sitting next to me, and the guy sitting next to me was just, every time something would show up, he'd tell his girlfriend or wife or whoever, like, oh, that's this, oh, that's this. And I'm just
Yeah.
like smiling in my head. I'm like, yeah, that's right. So
But a few things regarding the characters you just mentioned. One, Sun Spider was actually fan written, right? So it's cool to see that have come to life now within the movie. The Insomniac Spider-Man. Now we got used to him within the video games, and clearly within the video games, he's very protective and is a role model for Miles. I found it strange how he didn't have that connection to Miles in this moment where now everyone's chasing him, right?
mm,
I thought maybe he would have had somewhat of a more of a lead in that sense, especially given that it's a Sony property. Maybe he would have tried to steer some people the other way. But
mhm,
yeah, no. So we saw him for just a quick glimpse, but villains. We saw a ton of villains, right? And
yeah.
one that we don't know, is this the one from the MCU,
Yeah. Oh man, Prowler, man, that was probably the coolest thing. Like,
right?
that was definitely really cool. I mean, we've seen, you see rhinos, you see cravens in the background quick.
Doc Ock.
The Doc Ox, obviously Vulture is in the beginning, but yeah, to see like a live action character who possibly could be, in the upcoming MCU. We all know that he's there. We all know that he's had a conversation in a deleted scene with
Yep.
Miles. Um, yeah, it was pretty awesome. I mean, I'm sure, I cracked a smile with it, right?
Yeah, he was in the suit, man. So if that's the MCU suit, baby, I'm all for this. He looked awesome. But yeah, man. So even the Doc Ock, I think I even spotted the '90s animated cartoon Doc Ock that was being trapped within that little thing cocoon there that they had
Mhm.
all the villains in. So like we said, there's a ton of characters. Story wise, I think the one that really blew me away, besides what's his name, Childish Gambino, as Prowler,
Mhm.
was at the end. So now Miles finally escapes, and yes, guys, we're talking full spoilers, just a reminder. Miles finally escapes, right? And when he does escape, he goes back to his universe from the spider he was bitten from, not his universe.
Mhm.
And in that universe, because the spider bit him in 1610, well, that universe of 42, Earth 42, never got a superhero, right? So
Mhm.
you immediately get brought into this world where clearly everything is a mess. Like it's
Like a
just,
Gotham City. It literally
yeah,
looks like the
exactly.
Batman.
Without a Batman, exactly. It's like it's gone wild completely, and lo and behold, you see his uncle Prowler in this universe, he just finished trying to tell his mom for the first time that he's Spider-Man, but it has nothing to do with Miles and his mom's relationship because this is someone totally different. There is no Spider-Man in this universe, so it falls completely flat. They have Gwen looking like she's listening from outside the window, but she wasn't. She was in his universe.
Hmm.
And then she goes in the room to speak to the parents of Miles's universe, but we have Miles with his uncle, and he's clearly playing along, going with what's going on because he wants to obviously get closer and see what's happening with his uncle. And then lo and behold, gets knocked out completely by the Prowler, not his uncle, the Prowler. And we see him tied. It looks like his uncle is about to do something to him, and we get the reveal of who the Prowler is within that universe, and it's Miles Morales. So he looked awesome. Doesn't have the same hair. The
Yeah.
Prowler there looks incredible. He's got dreads.
It was so wild to see that. And that's something that's another thing that I've been thinking about for quite a long time. Like that would be he had if they didn't introduce him as the villain, like because he's really not the villain, only in that world in a way. But like I figured that's kind of the reason why after seeing trailers and trying to stay away from spoilers and clips and stuff like that is I always felt like Miguel didn't like Miles because he didn't like he didn't like a different version of Miles, but
Yeah,
didn't realize that it was, you know what I mean? Like obviously there's different versions. So maybe he thinks that every Miles Morales is bad, right?
yeah,
So he knew that this Miles Morales is out there on Earth 42 and he's a bad guy, but he's really in another world, he's actually a good guy. And
yeah,
even though he knows what Miles did on, was it 1610?
yep,
So it's like he still doesn't think it's up for it. And that's why I always thought in the back of my head, I guarantee they're going to have to introduce an evil Miles.
yep.
And lo and behold, like that's how you end it from a different universe. And I was like, it was kind of weird because like Wednesday night, I was having a whatnot sale, and I think I had like 3 different copies of that Spider-Man 2 #1, like where it's the first appearance of Evil Miles. And the
Yep.
book was going pretty solid on my whatnot sale. And I was just like, I think he's coming. I even teased it. I was like, this is a good book. I'm just saying, it's first appearance of Evil Miles. You kind of joke, you kind of say, oh, I heard some stuff, but yeah, I guess because then by like Thursday night, I was in another stream and that book went for almost close to $50, which is
Yeah, dude.
wild. So,
Another book that I'm starting to see take off, finally getting some credit, is Cataclysm: The Ultimate's Last Stand, issue 3. That's when Miles
mhm,
first makes his way into the well, into the Marvel universe within comics, which we can touch on very quickly in a
yeah,
bit. But yeah, man, I thought it was completely well done. Another big thing that happens within this movie is that now Miles's father is being promoted to captain, and Gwen's father is already captain in her universe, and we learned that the captains also have their Nexus event, right?
yeah, their canon event or whatever.
Exactly. So they're rushing home. Miles finds out that his father's about to die within 2 days. That's why he goes to escape. And Gwen goes back to her universe only to find out her father resigned. So that now stops, right?
Hmm.
He won't die within that universe. Now, if Miles makes it back home to stop that from happening, do both those universes collapse exactly like Miguel's? Because Miguel fell in love with the universe where he saw himself with a family, and that's what he always wanted. And then he went to intervene, messed it up, and then that universe collapsed, right? So
But I
did
think he intervened because he got killed. That Miguel O'Hara got killed, but his family never
exactly.
knew.
Yep.
And he stayed there. So that's kind of why it changed. But with like Gwen's universe, her dad made a decision which
Yep.
changes, it's not her intervening, it's him making the decision.
But
So
was
now in
it
the
based
second
on the
one,
talk? Was it
correct.
based on that talk?
It could be, but maybe if like, yeah, you're right. Maybe if she never had that, but that's still not her stopping.
True.
And so that again, that's the same thing. Like obviously we've seen it. They kind of like already show you in when Miles and the Spot kind of have that, like mind melding moment.
Mm.
So like, do we see this in the third film? Will his father die? Will he step aside as captain? Uh, I mean, it's gonna be pretty wild. to kind of round out like the ending. So obviously, Miles is stuck on Earth 42, and Gwen, who is my girl, gets the band back together. So you're seeing new characters and old characters. So Spider and Penny Parker and Spider-Man Noir and the
Spider-Ham.
original and Spider-Ham. Yeah,
He was almost nowhere in the movie. Neither was Spider-Man Noir. They only
yeah. I
get
think that's
together
what
at
it
the end.
was. I don't think they had the time, and to be honest, I didn't think I'd see Penny come
Yep.
back until the very end. She literally had just a very quick moment when all
Hmm.
the spiders were talking, but yeah, I think the next movie is going to be absolutely amazing. How are they going to go above this, right? Like, how are they going to top this movie? It's very tough. There's never been like a trilogy where the very few trilogies, I should say, just completely getting better and better, right?
Yep. Uh,
We Star Wars fans, we always talk about Empire Strikes Back, still the best, in the middle of the trilogies. Lord of the Rings, people say that Return of the King is the best one. Some people say Two Towers is the best one. I mean, the Captain Americas,
yep.
same thing. Like, do we see this being like the future? Can we see it going on? Can we see him leaping out of the animation and into live action at the end of the next movie? What do you think?
Absolutely. So there was an article. Apparently, Amy Pascal said that Miles will get a live action. Now, from the first movie, I always felt like because of how much Miles now is, you saw the glitch, you saw the characters coming through Spider Verse and so forth. I really feel like the next movie does end with him coming into the MCU. I really think either MCU live action form, most likely MCU, makes perfect sense. Don't forget Secret Wars is not too far away either,
Hmm.
and it does seem fitting, right? Within comics, that's pretty much where we saw Miles really make his, well, he makes his way into the Marvel comics with Cataclysm, The Ultimate's Last Stand issue 3, but
Hmm.
really Secret Wars is where everything unfolds. So timeline wise, it also makes sense. Now the next one, Beyond the Spider-Verse, is scheduled to drop March 29 of 2024. So I see it fitting. I think that's, we've already gotten a teaser here. We saw example the Prowler in live form here within
Hmm.
this movie. I really feel like something's gonna happen where maybe Miles's universe might even start to collapse, and he makes his way into the MCU.
Mm. Or again, he could just maybe be. Yeah, it's gonna be extremely strange to see how it does. I mean, maybe there's a way that they could bring him into live action, where he turns into live action, but
Yeah,
and
I
then he
just
could
don't
also
want
go
to
back
see
and
him.
forth in a way.
Yeah, I just don't want to see him in the Sony universe, meaning like with Tom Hardy and stuff like that. Like they have to set it up so that he makes it into the MCU. I
Hmm.
really think with how they've developed these two movies, and now I'm already looking forward to the third one, which again, I do think the Beyond the Spider Verse, there's a play of words there. I really think
Hmm.
beyond meaning we're going further than where we're at right now. But
Hmm.
when it comes to live action, it just makes the most sense, man, to have him hop into the MCU. Probably, if we look at anybody's movies, whether it be MCU, Sony, DC, take these three movies. If you were to hop into live form, these three movies, hands down, the best origin story to bring somebody to the big screen or MCU, in my opinion,
Hmm.
right? Because he makes his way into the MCU, these three movies would pretty much be his origin before he
Yeah,
makes it, right?
yeah. You don't need to do anything else. So,
Exactly.
final thoughts. CGC rating. What do you kind of rate this? We're like a 1 to 10. Where are you at on this one, BC?
I give it a 9. I give it a solid 9. The only reason why I'm taking away any point is just because, like I said, I do feel the fact that it could have been cut back a bit on time. Um, some scenes seemed a bit drug out. And another thing I was telling some of my friends after watching the movie was my son is 3.5. He absolutely fell in love with the first one, man. I think we've watched it 1,000 times over, like on Netflix,
Hmm.
but it's high paced. It kept the kid entertained, and it's an hour and 40 minutes. Now I'm taking him on Saturday, which again, for myself, yes, I'm selfish like that. I'm very excited to watch this again for a second time, but I wonder, is he even going to be as engaged as the first one, right? Because now
Hmm.
this it was the first one was fitting for kids, but now here we are with this one. It's a lot more serious tone. There's a lot of setup for the next one. I feel like the average person might go watch this. Like, let's say, I don't know, a single mom wants to take their kid to watch Spider-Man. Maybe they're just not gonna want to watch the next one because it's not really kid friendly. This one, if I have to say
Oh, I
anything,
agree. Yeah.
yeah, if I have to say anything negative, and that's me nitpicking, right? Like I'm going beyond to nitpick here, but otherwise, I would have given it a 10. Some things could be taken back, like I said, cut short, and then I think we would have had a perfect movie.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm about a 9. I think the things that kind of just, deter me is, again, the Spider-Punk stuff, which I just wish I could understand what he was saying because he's a great character. The thing that still bothers me, and Zach and I talk about this all the time, is the fact that, you have a character like Miles who the only reason why he's popular is because of these movies. He's really not that great in comic book format, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
no one's, knocking down doors like buying, they're not reading, there's no series for him that, and we just talked about this last week, there's no story arc where he's like rememberable in, right?
yeah,
Like the Spider-Man series where he's first with him and he first meets Peter Parker, and then the next series where there's this evil Miles, or like, prominent roles. Obviously the ending of the Ultimate Universe is another thing, but that's not even like, you can't even say that's the ending of like Ultimate Spider-Man, because there's so much
yeah,
that comes out of that universe in general. And now it's like, I just don't know. Like, I don't see why these people love Miles so much. Is it just more of a hype thing? Is it more of a spec thing? But at the end of the day, I think the movie's great. I cannot wait to see it again, because now that I could sit back and just, enjoy it without
mhm,
being like, like, because now, like, I can enjoy it, but I could also see, like, try to look at more spiders, because
yeah,
there's no way, like, once this movie gets put on like Blu-ray 4K or on Disney Plus, I'm gonna just pause it the
yep,
entire time that they're in New York and be like counting all them all. Because I mean, obviously someone's already done that in YouTube, I'm sure. But
yeah.
like, I get to sit there and like look at the cool characters that like you've missed. Like, and I'm surprised Venom didn't make appearance. I'm surprised Tom Hardy didn't get in there, but it is what it is.
Miss
So
Chen did. Miss Chen
yeah,
made her
Miss Jen was,
appearance.
yeah, she threw some lines in there, so that was good.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, overall, I mean, I think, we both agree on it, and it's tough. It's funny because typically, like when we do Marvel movies, there's always like love and hate, and especially with the more recent MCU stuff. But you can't hate on this Marvel Sony, movie. It was
yeah.
just, it was near perfect. Um, but yeah, that's really great to hear from you, and I'm glad that you're seeing it again. I'm gonna go see it again. Hopefully, everyone that's out there is seeing it at least more than once. So before we get out of here, you have some new YouTube channel, don't you, BC? Like, where can people find you?
Yes, sir. I launched my own YouTube channel as of last week. So it's a Blakk Crown Comics, Blakk. Basically covering tons of stuff, right? The hottest topics of the week. We go over some market stuff as well when it comes to comics, seeing what's moved. But yeah, man, it was a great kickoff show. I don't know if you saw. Actually, no, I know you saw. I was wearing a beautiful T-shirt
Mm.
on my first episode, the Comic Con podcast T-shirt that I waited 1 year for. But yeah, man. So definitely check me out there, and obviously on Instagram as well.
And of course, he's always rounding out sometimes on the newbie verse, and also Comic Kingpin. So
Yes.
again, BC, you're always welcome. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for popping in here for a bonus content review of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And if you haven't heard the last episode, make sure you check out some previous episodes for everybody. And we'll catch you every Friday, where on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and all those other podcast platforms. Enjoy the rest of your day, evening, weekend, wherever you're listening to this. And we'll see you soon. Peace out, everybody.